Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I am the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is kind of a special webinar. It's for leadership teams. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through BNI Connect and take a look at some of the functions that leadership teams have access to. Some of the common functions, such as how to submit a POMS report and how to schedule the speaker rotation, how to assign a mentor and a mentee. All of these things are accessible to various leadership team members, and we're going to go through some of those today. We'll also take a look at some of the reports that are available, the statistical reports, and how to get some information back out of the system. A few housekeeping things to go over before we get started. First of which is with this particular webinar, I'm going to try to avoid saying that it's this person's responsibility to do this or this person's responsibility to do that. One of the reasons why I try to avoid that is because different regions do things differently. And in a lot of regions, different tasks are delegated to people that might not be traditional. Let's say, for example, I work with a few regions here in the United States that to ease the vice president's burden, they've delegated entering the POMS statistics to a special position in the chapter. Or in some regions, in my region, for example, we have the visitor hosts enter visitor information, whereas in other regions, it's the secretary treasurer's job to do that. So that being said, the permissions in BNI Connect, generally speaking, anybody that's on the leadership team, meaning the president, the vice president, the secretary treasurer, they all tend to have the same permissions. They can all do the same things. And partly that is so they can back each other up as well. A few other housekeeping things about today's webinar. This one is a little bit longer than the usual webinar. Most of the webinars we do are 30 minutes. I find that with the questions and the leadership teams that are on these calls, these webinars generally take closer to 45 minutes to an hour to go through the material. And again, you're welcome to ask as many questions as you'd like to, and I'd be happy to answer those questions as we're going through the material. The best way to ask questions, since everybody by default is muted, is to type your questions into the question panel here in the GoToWebinar software. I'll see those questions pop up on my screen and I'll answer them as we're going through. We'll also be recording this webinar and I'll be posting it up to our YouTube channel. You can also find it on our support site. The support site is located at support.bniconnect.com, and you can get there by clicking on any of the question marks. It'll take you to a help article based on that. But the big question mark in the upper right-hand corner will take you to the full support site. On the site, you'll see our list of upcoming webinars. I'll have the July webinar series posted very soon, since this is the last one in June. And if you scroll down just a little bit to chapter training, you'll see our recorded webinars as well as a bunch of other things up here. So you'll see under recorded webinars, you'll see all the June 2015 ones. They'll all be listed there in chronological order, so you can review them, and this one will be added to that list very shortly. All right, let's get started. Let's take a look at the leadership team tools and reports. Now for this, we are going to have to go past the home page, but before we do that, a couple of things that you will want to know about this home page, especially for vice presidents who tend to get a lot of questions about statistics and not sure how to troubleshoot it, and when are things entered into the POMS report, and especially with the what we call the member module, which is all of the online slips. These do need to be accounted for in a slightly different way, because when people enter slips, for example, when they submit a thank you for closed business or a referral slip, those get automatically entered into that week's POMS report for you. So as a vice president or as the person that's in charge of entering POMS on a weekly basis, do keep that in mind, that when you go to enter the palms, there may be data already in there, and it's from all of the online slips that were entered. One other common question that we've been getting from the BNI web regions, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, a couple of places in the United States, is when you're entering the one-to-one statistics into the palms, you no longer have the ability to enter people's names. If people would like to record who they had one-to-ones with, they do need to submit their own electronic one-to-one slip. They would choose the person from their chapter that they have met with, and they can record the details, and then that slip will show up in both people's one-to-one report, which they have access to review all of their one-to-ones as well as their referral slips and their thank you for closed business. So as a member, and I am a member here in the Wakefield chapter in Rhode Island, I can go back and review all of my one-to-ones that I've had and who I had the one-to-ones with. However, as a leadership team, you would no longer have visibility of that because this is private information just to the members. From a member perspective, it's important to know that when you first submit your slip, it will appear in draft mode, which means it's waiting in the Palms report for credit, but the credit hasn't been given yet because that will only be submitted after the weekly meeting, which we'll show you how to do that in just a minute. So you will see the status here change from draft to completed once the vice president or whoever's in charge of that does submit the one-to-one. Now, Craig asks, well, what if both members submit the one-to-one? If both members do submit a one-to-one, they will get a warning that it already exists. So also in BNI Connect, both people will get credit. So if I go in and I submit a one-to-one, and let's say that I had a one-to-one, I don't know, with Frank Karpowitz, and we met at the South County Commons and we talked about testing, and we had a date that I set this one-to-one at. Let's say I'm recording it from last week. I can then submit this. Now, if I go and I try to record another one with Frank for the 15th, or if Frank tries to record one with me for the 15th, so I'm going to go ahead and submit another one with Frank for the 15th, and it doesn't matter what I put in for the location or the topic. It'll tell me there's already another one-to-one in the system. So this will create a duplicate entry. So he would go ahead and cancel that and not submit it. So does that answer your question, Craig? Excellent. Now, you also had another question that you popped in. It says, my inbox indicates 12 messages. Do these emails automatically get forwarded to your actual email, or do they solely reside in BNI Connect? So now you're talking about the messages up here in this is an internal messaging system. So these messages by default will stay internal. However, you can get a copy forwarded to your regular email address, and you do that by going into your profile. So you click on Update Profile, or you can go to Options, My Account, and on the Settings tab, it's going to be the one that looks like a gear. If I go to the Settings tab, you can see down here, do you want to forward BNI Connect messages I receive to my email address? I do have that set to yes, so I do get them sent to my personal address. By default, these are all no. Keep in mind that it's just these social media messages that they're talking about, not all BNI Connect messages, like referral notifications and things like that. All right, does that answer your question, Craig? David says, what if you have two different one-to-ones on the same day? By all means, enter two one-to-one slips. It's only checking to see if you try to submit two with the same person on the same day. And there are legitimate times, maybe you had a breakfast meeting with somebody and then later on after work you went out and got some drinks and had a one-to-one after work as well. You could submit two for the same day. It's just warning you in case you are making a mistake or double entering it, especially if you're putting one in for the past. Does that help? All right, so the other important thing about this homepage while we're still here is that these numbers up top, so this is the My BNI business up here. So this is basically a person's personal POMS report or personal participation report. None of these numbers will change on a daily basis because these are being pulled from the POMS report. Only after the POMS report has been fully submitted, fully saved, finalized, will these numbers change. So I just entered a one-to-one slip, but my number of one-to-ones has not gone up yet. It will go to 48 after in my case, my vice president has submitted the POMS report next week. But again, it will appear in my review my slips right away. Now, for members that are, I guess, saying that, oh, I have more one-to-ones than that, or I wasn't absent that many times, or whatever else it is, my recommendation is to have them go to this My Personal Participation Report. And this will give a member a week-by-week history of their participation for the past year. So this makes it very easy to say, yeah, you know what, I know I submitted a one-to-one last week. How come it's not showing up here? Or I know I wasn't absent on that particular week. How come I have an absent listed here? So that will help to troubleshoot because they can pinpoint exactly which week. It also shows their summary, sponsored members, and any training events that they've attended. All right, so I didn't want to spend too much time on the online slips, but does anybody have any other questions on the online slips before we dive a little bit deeper into the system? Craig says, if you're using the online slips, do you need to turn in hard copies? And the answer to that is kind of, sort of. The reason I say that is for the referrals, in order to be considered for the door prize, you're going to need something to draw that person's name from. And also from a referral reality check standpoint, it's helpful to turn in those physical slips. Now, you can turn in those slips by using your Print Your Weekly Slips report, and this will essentially give you printed referral slips, and then it'll organize the rest of the information just so you can announce the one-to-ones and the CEUs and thank you for closed business. But there's no need to necessarily turn in hard copies of this other activity just for the referral slips. And if you don't want to print them out or use your paper or your ink, your chapter should still keep on hand regular referral slips. And what about double counting? It's pretty obvious. I'll show you a POMS report in just a second. It's pretty obvious that there's data already entered there. And if somebody's turning in a second slip for that. But we'll go over that in just a second, Craig, if that's okay. All right, any other questions on this? And otherwise, let's dig in a little bit. All right, so to get to some of the other functions, we do have to go past the home screen. All of the other stuff in BNI Connect is buried under these menus up top. We have network operations, reports, tools, and admin. Depending on your access level, you may see certain things or you may not see certain things. The way that permissions in BNI Connect work is all of us are using the same system. It's just which levels you have access to. So most of the time, for example, a regular member that logs in is only going to see the home, network, operations, and reports. They don't have access to anything under the tools menu, which is stuff like the chapter website, for example. And they're not going to have access to the admin menu because that's mostly dealing with permissions. So most members would only even see network, operations, and reports. Now, people always say to me, well, I don't know where to find anything. It's not the most user-friendly system in the world. And, the way that I remember where to find things is that network is going to be all of the really the social media stuff, the interacting with other people in a networking sense. So that's where the groups are, and that's where your connections interface is, and the testimonials, things like that. Operations and reports are really where you're going to spend the majority of the rest of your time, especially on the leadership team. Remember that reports are read only. So if you're looking to get statistics and things back out of the system, you're going to go to reports. But if you're looking to input something into the system, you're going to go to operations. So again, reports are read only. Operations is input. Okay? So let's take a look at the operations menu and see the kind of stuff that's under there. So I'm going to go to operations. And under operations, you'll see that we have all of the different tasks that we can perform on the left. And then on the right is the different submenus or the individual tasks. So we have visitors, we have meeting management, manage memberships. There's a goals program you can use for your chapter to keep track of your chapter goals. For example, how big you want to get and how many new members and how many visitors and how much thank you for closed business. We have a whole separate webinar on that. The mentoring program where you can assign a mentor and a mentee. There's certain emails that you can create through the system, and there's a news function for your chapter website. While I'm down here, let me just, one thing that I get asked quite often, and one of my favorite things to use on here, is with the create email function. And there's a couple of things on here that I'd like to show you. If you need to email your chapter, I find the easiest way to do that is to go to create email and go to email my chapter. This will give you a distribution list of all of the current members in your chapter. I know before BNI Connect, one thing that I'd always have to do is go and look for the last email in my inbox for the whole group and just hit reply all and kind of hope it went to everybody. Now you can just highlight, copy and paste all of these and drop them into an email. I do recommend putting everybody on the BCC line so that it doesn't get kicked back around, and if it gets forwarded, the email addresses won't be listed. You do need to use your own email program. This is just going to give you a quick list of all of the members of your chapter. Now, some people do also use this internal messaging system, but as we said earlier with Craig, the messages don't automatically get forwarded to people's emails, so unless they log into BNI Connect and they look there, they may not be getting the messages. So I recommend instead using the email my chapter. The other thing is that this messaging system is for all of your contacts. So as you do start getting connected to other people in BNI Connect, I have about 500 connections or so around the world. It's much harder to just segregate out your chapter. So Laura says, how do I get the email addresses updated? So actually each member can update their own email address. So the members have access to update their email address. They just need to log in to BNI Connect. They go to their profile, and on their profile, they can update their own email address. So does that help, Laura? Excellent. So it's one less thing that you have to do. All right, so the other thing that's under here is there is a great email visitor invitation function, and this allows you to invite somebody to come and visit your chapter. You just click on email visitor invitation, enter a couple of details. So let's say I'm going to invite, let's see, Tammy Martinez to my chapter, and the email address. Now, I'm going to use my own email address, so this sends a message to me and you guys can see what it looks like. So I'm going to send this to my email address here and then put in a personal message. The personal message is going to be the first paragraph of this automated email, of this template email that gets sent. Thanks for being on the webinar today. I would love it if you visited my chapter. And I click send. It's going to package that up nicely and send that to my email address. I should get that any second. It does send it out right away. And here's the message that was sent. So it's a nice branded email, has a nice graphic in there. Dear Tammy, thanks for being on the webinar. I'd love it if you visited my chapter. It then invites them to my chapter, the B&I Burr chapter. This is one of my testing chapters. Lets them know where it is, where they meet, what day and what time. It then puts in all the automated text that lets them know that what B&I is all about, that they're looking for somebody in their profession, and to RSVP with you. And if they hit reply to this, it will go back to the email address in BNI. So it'll go right back to actually my email because it came from me. So after you've sent an invitation, a couple of other things that you can do with the operations menu in regards to visitors. So now we're back up at this manage visitors, and you'll notice there's a couple of different options in here under manage visitors. We have a couple of things for after the meeting, recording a visitor and managing your visitor's database. There's also registering a prospective visitor and managing registered visitors. So the next step in the visitor process would be that after you've invited them, if they say, yes, I'd like to come to the meeting, one of the great things you can do is to register them for that upcoming meeting. And you do that by going to Manage Registered Visitors and register a prospective visitor before a meeting. It's a very simple form to fill out. Just need to fill out the information about that prospective visitor. You're going to invite somebody from a sign company. Now you'll notice that when I go to do this, I can only choose future meeting dates because I am pre-registering somebody for an upcoming meeting. So I could choose, for example, the July 1st meeting. And I'm going to invite Jacob Smith from Sign Co. Any details that I have, like the address, the phone number is mandatory, and the email address. And once again, I'm going to put in my own email address because one of the great things about this is that it will, silly Google Chrome, it reset my form on me. Sometimes autofill is a bad thing. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this. And one of the great things about this is that it helps to solidify that visit with the visitor by sending them a registration email saying, now you are registered to visit the meeting. So instead of just being, hey, why don't you come to the meeting? Yeah, I'll be there. Now it says you are officially registered to visit. It'll also send them a reminder 2 days before. So on this meeting's on Wednesday, so on Monday, I'll get a reminder saying, by the way, you're registered to visit the B&I Burr chapter. Please make sure you bring plenty of business cards, et cetera, et cetera. What this is doing is it's really helping to increase the number of visitors that actually show up to the meetings. It will also notify the leadership team and the visitor hosts and the director consultants that a visitor is on the way. Now, the next part of this is that after they've come to the meeting, you definitely want to mark attendance. So after Jacob Sign here has gone to the meeting, I can go in and manage the visitor registrations. And let's say that Jacob Smith did attend the meeting. I can go in and edit this record and mark this visitor as having attended. I'll also get the option to add a visitor to the POMs, which means that the first part, we're just recording the visitor, which means we're building our visitor database for the chapter, which we can always go back to. But adding to the POMs gives the person that invited them credit in the POMS report. Now, you do want to be careful of this because it does affect things like your conversion ratio if you're keeping track of that statistic. So I can give the person credit for this. I can also choose whether to send a follow-up email at this point. And what will happen is once I've submitted this, I will get an email saying thank you for visiting. And you'll notice that Jacob Smith is no longer in the list here as a prospective visitor. He's been moved over to my visitor database. And here comes this email saying, thank you so much for recently visiting the BNI Burr chapter. Amy says, do members registered as visitor hosts have permissions for this function, or is it just for executive LT members? Generally speaking, all of the executive LT members will have access to this. All of the visitor hosts usually also have access to manage visitors. Members are only able to register a prospective visitor for an upcoming meeting. So most members would still have access to be able to at least register their guests. All right. Now, let's say that a visitor shows up and they didn't pre-register. I highly recommend going in and just making sure that the visitor isn't listed there, but then you can just click on Add Visitor, which is really, it's the same form, but you notice that you can choose past dates for when they actually visited. And at that point, they're going to get the thank you message, but not the, you're registered to visit. It would be kind of silly to register them for a future meeting if they've already visited. By the way, if you're doing a catch-up and let's say that you're entering a visitor from a month ago, you may want to not send the visitor follow-up message because it would look, I'd say, a little weird that they get a thank you for visiting when it was, let's say, a month ago. All right, let's go back to the operations menu and look at a couple of other things. So that's really a lot to do with the visitor process. Let's take a look at the next menu here, which is the meeting management. And this has to do with the weekly managing of your meetings, which is largely two things: the POMS reports and editing the speaker rotation. So entering your speakers in for the next 6 to 8 weeks. Let's look at the speakers first. It's pretty straightforward. We just click on View Edit Speakers. If we'd like to view the speakers, we can choose a date to start viewing the speakers from. So I can look somewhat at the history as well. And then if I need to, I can put in the speakers for the next week. So I can see here for my Burr chapter up in Antarctica, I have people scheduled through the 8th of July. So let me schedule for the next couple of weeks in July. I just click on Assign Speaker. And let me put somebody in for the 15th. And on the 15th, we're going to have my good friend 3334444, and they're going to talk about numbers, and more numbers. And now this person will be in the list as an assigned speaker for the 15th. And we can do that for as far out as we want to, although I really don't recommend doing more than 4 to 6 weeks out. The reason for that is that in order to change the speaker rotation, really the only thing you can do is to delete a speaker and put somebody else in that slot. One thing that you cannot do is to shift the rotation. Like move everybody up a week. In order to do that, you'd have to delete everybody in the list. That is something that is being considered for a future release, but for now, keep in mind that it is a 1 week at a time scheduling. The benefits of scheduling people here in the system also are that you can, they will get an email reminder twice before their speaking engagement. So the day after your BNI meeting, next week's speaker will get a reminder. So 6 days before the meeting that they're speaking at, they will get a reminder saying you're due to speak this week. They'll also get another reminder 3 days before the meeting, and the Secretary Treasurer will get a reminder as well 3 days before the meeting. In addition to that, all of these names, the names for the next 4 weeks, will appear on the chapter website. So if I go to my antarcticreferrals.com, I'm going to go to find a chapter and go to the Burr chapter here. If I go to this chapter's website, now you can see I messed up the website a little bit doing a demonstration, but one thing that is at the bottom of this page is all of the upcoming speakers for the next month. So I have Albert Camus speaking and all the stuff that he's speaking about on the 1st. On the 8th is Alfred E. Newman. And the one that I just put in, you can see that the chapter website was automatically updated with 333-4444, and he's going to be talking about numbers, and more numbers. So that's another reason to enter the speakers here in BNI Connect. All right, going back to the operations menu. Now let's look at entering a POMS report. So entering a POMS report, again, it's a fairly straightforward thing. You have a couple of different options. You can just go jump right into entering a POMS report. You can also go and view any previous POMS to see which ones have been entered, for example. So if I go to view the POMS, I can go back as far back in time as I want to. And we can see here all the POMs that have been entered since the 1st of April. And it looks like I do have a bit of a slacker of a data entry person in Antarctica. They haven't been putting in all of the POMs reports. But any of these previous ones, I could click on the word for status. So if I wanted to look at the POMs report for the 13th of May here, I like to right click on it and open it in a new tab so I don't lose my place here. And I can look at this individual POMS report. If I need to update this, I can unlock it. It'll then prompt me if there's any visitors that I need to enter. I'm going to skip past this for a second. And then I can go in and update this POMS, and this was actually not 5,500. It was 55,000, so I'm going to add another 0 there. And Jacob was absent that week. When I'm done, I can resubmit this. Now, if you don't have the unlock button, don't panic. It's just a regional preference. If you don't have the unlock button, you would have to talk to your regional office and they could unlock the report for you. Another thing to notice is that sometimes a draft copy will exist. And for this, I'm going to actually switch to some live data here. I'm going to go to my own chapter and my own region. So just bear with me for a second. Now, our chapter, my personal chapter, has gone quote unquote paperless with referrals. So we still do turn in the papers so that we're there for a door prize and things like that, but we typically don't turn in all the other paper. If it's going to be counted, it has to be entered online in BNI Connect. So the great part about that is, for example, our meeting was yesterday. So what happens is as soon as people start inputting slips for the week, a draft copy is created. So the very first day one was submitted, a draft was entered into BNI Connect, and it starts accumulating all of the online slips. So all of these slips were entered online through BNI Connect. So our vice president, who does the report in our region, all she has to do is go in, mark the attendance, and then submit the report. Now we can also view the slips audit report, and this will show us all of the online activity that was entered by the members. So going back to, I think it was Chris's question back in the beginning, Chris asked, well, how do we avoid duplicates? Well, first of all, if people are entering them online, the credit will appear there, and most people aren't going to have a paper referral and an electronic referral for the same person on the same week. Most people are just going to be submitting online referrals or just be submitting paper. So there's that right there. And then if you look at the slips audit report, it's pretty easy to tell who's been submitting various slips. So does that help to answer your question from earlier? All right. As far as entering POMs, if you do have a POMs that you need to enter, just click on the Enter POMs. And the first thing you're going to do is choose the date that you're going to enter the POMs report for. So let's say that I am going to be submitting the report for this past week, the 25th. I can click on Enter POMs. And it will then allow me to go in and basically fill out the form. Again, in my personal chapter, all we have to do is take attendance because all the rest of the information's been entered. If you're using the paper slips, it's still the same process of counting up the slips and then entering the appropriate numbers into the fields. Hopefully everybody knows what the abbreviation stands for, but just real quick, POMS, present, absent, late, medical, and substitute. RGI and RGO. RG stands for referrals given, and I and O, that stands for inside and outside. So an inside referral is when two members do business with each other. So if I was to refer myself to, I needed my lawn landscaped, I would refer myself to Shannon Cuthill in the chapter, and he would come and mow my lawn and take care of my stuff. That would be an inside referral. An outside referral is if my neighbor needed their lawn mowed and I referred my neighbor to Shannon, then that would be an outside referral. And he would have the referral received, RRI or RRO, and I would have the referral given. V is for visitors, one-to-ones, and thank you for closed business. Now, if you're using CEUs, you do have to scroll over to the right here. I do get asked about this a lot, and the reason that these are hard set to be a certain width, it has to do with translations, and there's some languages, especially German, that some of these translations are really, really long, and it was actually making it much more difficult because of pushing things crazy all over the screen. So that's the reason that they made these fixed width like that. So let's see, we have a couple of questions. Ruth says, can I go back 6 months and re-enter information that isn't correct? If I do, will it affect things that members have entered online for this next meeting? So yes, you can go back, and as long as you have that unlock POMS ability, or if the POMS report didn't exist at all, yes, you can go back and enter POMS reports in. Now, as far as entering slips in, the electronic slips, that you really can't go back and enter past information for. But for chapter statistics, yes, you could go back and correct that. Craig is saying that my volume is dropping off. Everybody else is having that same problem. I can try to speak louder or something else. All right, so Craig, I think it might be something local. I'm getting reports from other people that the volume is staying stable and not a problem. So Craig, it might be something with your speakers or with your computer. I apologize. All right, so does that answer your question, Ruth, about going back? Each POMS report is independent, so it won't affect this meeting. One other note about this is that you'll see that there's a couple of other options at the bottom. There's discard POMS. So let's say that the POMS report is completely messed up and you need to start over again. You can discard the POMS and re-enter it. All of the online entered activities, so the online slips that people entered, will come right back into the report for you. So you don't have to worry about losing that information, but anything that you manually entered, obviously you'd have to re-manually enter. There's also another thing here that says mark as holiday. If you have a week where your chapter doesn't meet, you definitely want to click on Mark as Holiday. What that does is it closes out that POMS report and takes it out of the statistics. So things like per week statistics, it removes it from the calculation. It also takes all of those online slips and pushes them to the next week's meeting. So you want to definitely remember to mark anything as a holiday. Ruth says, but it turns in everything as zero. It actually, it basically voids that meeting, so to speak. So it's not really turning everything in as zero. It just kind of takes that whole week out of all of the statistics. And again, especially for the online slips, it would take all of those slips and give the credit for those in the next week's meeting, which would be more appropriate. So does that make sense, Ruth? All right, so let's see. We have another question. Would it still be an inside referral if you are giving a referral to someone in another chapter? That's open to a little bit of debate on the exact definition for that. Personally, my opinion, check with your executive director first. But by definition, if I'm, this is signifying introducing somebody to a new relationship other than yourself. So if you're introducing yourself to somebody else, I would still call that an inside BNI or an inside chapter referral. When you're introducing them to anybody else, then that's still an outside. So if you're referring yourself to somebody in another chapter, I would still call that an inside referral personally. Does that make sense, Kim? Does that answer your question? And again, there's room for interpretation on that. Amy says, is there an ability to personalize automated letters? So no, the letters are done at a regional level. So all of those emails that go out, those get customized by your director, your executive director. So if you do feel that any of those need to be updated, please talk with your executive director about that. All right. All right, going back to the operations menu, just a couple of other things to look at before we jump over to reports for the last 5 to 10 minutes or so. Mentoring is an important part of BNI. So one of the great ways to increase member retention is to make sure that they're paired up with a mentor right after they become part of the chapter. This gives them kind of a buddy in the chapter. It will, the mentoring program in BNI Connect will send them an email every week, just kind of checking in with the mentor and mentee saying, hey, by the way, this week you want to be talking about giving a better weekly presentation, and this week you want to be planning for your 10-minute, and this week you want to make sure that you get to the member success program. So all of that is done by pairing people up with a mentor and mentee. And you can do that. First, you can go and view any mentors and mentees. And just choose a time range here. And I can see which people have been paired up in the past. And then if I need to pair somebody else up, I can add somebody, choose a start date. This is essentially when the emails will start going out. Now, I may want the emails to go out on Mondays instead of Fridays so people don't ignore them for the weekend. And I choose a mentor and a mentee. And once I click submit, they will start getting the weekly emails. I'm not going to do that right here at the moment, but that is how you assign a mentor and a mentee. All right, and as I said, there's some other special functions here. There's the goals function, which allows you to establish goals for your chapter, and then it will automatically update them with the statistics as the year goes on. We have a whole special webinar for that. As a matter of fact, I just had that webinar yesterday. I'll have the recording up on the support site very shortly. There's also the manage news function, and the news function is allows you to really keep a newsletter on your chapter website without having to go in and edit the whole chapter website. So this allows you to do that. Again, special function, I'm not going to get into it today, but if you'd like more information about that, please feel free to ask. All right, any other questions on this, on the operations, on the input side of things before I move on to the reports? All right, so let me go on and move on to the reports. Let's take a look at the reports menu. So as I said, reports are going to be read only. You can only get information out of BNI Connect in the reports menu. There is no data entry to be done here. So that being said, there are a ton of reports. There's about 20 different reports that are available here in BNI Connect. I am not going to go through all of them today. You can't break reports, so feel free to jump into them and take a look at all of them and things like that. Craig has a question about chapter news. Right now, I don't have a specific webinar for chapter news, but I would be happy to show you the function if it's something that you need training on, or work with your regional office to get that established. So up till now, there hasn't been enough interest in it to run a whole class for it on a regular basis. But again, why don't you email me offline, support@bniconnect.com, and let's get something set up, even if it's a one-time thing for you. Would that help, Craig? All right. So reports. I'm just going to hit about 5 or 6, maybe 7 of my favorite reports, and then you guys can ask questions on any other ones, and I'd be happy to help you out with those. So member training report, it's going to seem like I'm going down the list, but the first couple of them happen to be my favorite and the best ones for leadership teams. So member training report, pretty obvious. You find out who's been going to trainings. Now, one thing I find really helpful about this report is that we're not supposed to schedule anybody for a 10-minute presentation at a chapter meeting until they've done the member success program. So one thing that you can do here is use the show never attended option, choose member success program, and it'll ignore the dates when we're doing this, but this will show us, for example, for my chapter, who has not yet ever taken the member success program, which means if I was the secretary treasurer in my chapter and I was doing the scheduling, I would know not to schedule Sammy and Peter yet until they've gone and taken the member success program. It also allows me to see, well, Peter joined way back in April, so it's been really over 2 months. It's been almost 3 months now. I really need to get on his case about making sure that he gets to that member success program and gets it scheduled. Gives me his phone number, their phone numbers, and their email addresses right here as well, in case I need to get in touch with them. Now, the roster report, pretty straightforward. It is your chapter roster. So it has all of your member names and everything, and their phone numbers, things like that. But what is important about this one from a leadership team standpoint is to make sure that your officers are listed correctly, especially when it comes to people saying, hey, yeah, I can't access this or I can't access that, or there's a question about who can enter visitors before. If they're not listed as the visitor host, then they more than likely are not going to have permissions to enter the visitors. Or if a membership committee, they wouldn't have access to review the renewals and things like that. So you do want to make sure that, especially if somebody's having trouble with something, that they're listed here correctly. It also gives you your contact information for your director for your chapter. So if you need to get in touch with your director, that's an easy way to look up their phone number right here. Chris and Laura both are asking, who updates this page? So that is done by your regional office. So your regional office needs to put in the various assignments, and once the assignments are done, they will automatically appear here. The reason that your regional office has to do this is that a lot of times they have to make sure that that they've been trained, and especially for leadership team people, we have to make sure that there is a leadership team agreement on file. So Ruth says she just ran the report for those who haven't taken it, and nobody has taken it. There are going to be some, especially if you're here from Australia, Canada, New Zealand, you got migrated over into the system. There may be some catch-up time. There's some things that needed to be manually adjusted. So just get in touch with your regional office and say, hey, it looks like our member success history didn't come over. Can you please update that? And your regional office will be able to take care of that with you. Okay, Ruth? All right. So moving on down, membership dues report. Again, seems like I'm going in line here. I will skip a few in a few minutes, I promise. This will show you all of your members and when they're due for renewal. This one's especially helpful for the secretary treasurers, for the vice presidents, for the membership committee. So you really want to make sure that, again, the people that are up due for July, they should already be well into the renewal process. They should have their renewal applications submitted already. You also want to be looking at this list for 6 months from now, because when we talk about member retention and keeping people in your chapter, it's all well and good to do the review when they're about to do the renewal, but that's really a last ditch yay or nay. If you want to help your members stay in the chapter, you really need to review them 6 months out in order to give them a chance to get better. So I should be looking at people that are due in December and even into January and be working with these people to say, hey, are you struggling with your one-to-ones? Or are you struggling with your referrals or anything like that? And help them, maybe get them a mentor for the next 6 months so that when we're reviewing them for their renewal, it'll become an easy decision. If you are doing the online renewal process in your region, this also is where you can do a pre-approval for those members by clicking on the Redhead. If you're not doing it, then that option won't be available. All right, meeting notes report. If you're looking to increase the number of referrals given in your chapter, this is a great way to do that. All you need to do is to print this out and make a copy of it for everybody in the chapter. This is really designed to allow people to take notes during the meeting. So as Christy Armstrong does her weekly presentation, I can write down that she asked for this person or she was talking about this certain topic and be able to remind myself during the week. Now, a lot of people say, well, I don't really like the way that prints out or what have you. I have a good solution for you. Export this. On most reports, we have the option to export, and there's also export without headers. What export means, it's going to take everything on this page and export it. And what export without headers means is that it is only going to take this bottom set of information. It's not going to get this stuff up here at the top. So just to show you what that difference looks like, here's what the export looks like. You can see up here at the top, it has all of the who ran the report and when it was run and things like that. And when I export it without headers, you can see now it just has the 4 columns that I need instead of all that merge stuff. So if you want to have more space for taking notes, great. Export it to Excel, and you can make this notes field as big as you want it to be. You can even make it bigger that way. You can add a nice color scheme to it and format as table, and I want this to be orange. So it's differentiated. So all those things you can do once you get it out to Excel. Another thing you can do with this, this is a kind of off-topic hint, is we pass around a copy of this to our chapter and have one person type it up at the end of the week for referrals that were asked for, and then we email that out to the chapter on a weekly basis. So for example, just yesterday, I got an email. The person in my chapter uses that list and writes down what everybody was asking for and then emails that around. So now I have a record week by week by week of what people asked for. And if I need to review that or I meet somebody that I think somebody asked for, I can go back and look that information up. So that's just a little power tip. Tammy has a question. She says, is the Redhead only available to leadership? As the administrator, I don't have the Redhead, just their status. Tammy, that probably means that you haven't, in your region, you haven't turned on the online renewals yet. So it should show up if you have online renewals. And if you'd like to, at the end, we can take 5 minutes and review that. The place to check that is under Admin Region, View Edit Business Rules. So Admin Region, Manage Region, View Edit Business Rules, and you'll see if the online renewals are turned on towards the bottom of that list. All right, so coming back here, Summary POMS report, fairly straightforward. That is the bread and butter of the statistics for the chapter. You can run this for any date range you want to. By default, it's going to show you the last 6 months, but I can go back to 1984 before our chapter was even established and take a look at our full historical stats forever if I'd like to and see how many, I can see that our chapter is past a total of almost, well, I guess over 10,000 referrals since our inception, which is a pretty cool thing to know. You do have an option on whether or not to show the dropped member names. The reason for this is that, I just ran that report. I could see what the total was for our entire history, but it didn't necessarily show all of the people. But if I want to see every single person that has ever been a member of my chapter, I can unhide those names and show them so I could see them. Isaac has a quick question. He says, this is covering an awful lot of material. Will it be archived for future review? Absolutely. We are recording this. It will be on the support site as well as on our YouTube channel. So I can show you that in a couple of minutes after these last couple of reports. All right, skipping down a couple, there's the speaker report, but we just showed how to enter speakers, but you can see who's the upcoming speakers by choosing the speaker report. The regional leadership team report will show you all of the directors in the region. The personal POMS report, just like that personal participation report on the home screen, you can run a personal POMS report for any single person in your chapter. That comes in really handy when it comes to renewal time and when you're reviewing people's memberships. Scrolling down just a little bit, we have the VP report. This is a 1 month, week by week report. So if I wanted to, let's say, look at the month of May, I could see each week and the totals for each week. It then gives me the totals at the bottom and the full monthly totals. There's also a 6-month report, which is called the cumulative VP report. And you can run this one for up to 6 months at a time. The reason for this limitation, by the way, so if I try to run this for longer, it's only going to show me the first 6 months. The reason for this is that we simply run out of room on this particular report function as far as number of rows going across. So if you need to do a full year, you will have to run this twice. But this shows the month by month, side by side totals, again with the totals at the bottom. So Tammy has a question about seat value, and she did send me a screenshot earlier of a report that, for those of you that have migrated over from web, a report that you guys used to have in web, which was this particular report, the VP report in web. looking at this report in web, that is a great report. It gives you your totals for the month and the year and the average referrals and the average thank you for closed business. I'm afraid that would have to be done manually right now in BNI Connect. I have taken note of that particular report. I have forwarded that on to the programmers, onto the people that make decisions about programming, which is the project board and the executive board for BNI Connect. Unfortunately, I don't have any decision-making power when it comes to what gets put into BNI Connect. I can only make recommendations to the powers that be. So again, for seat value, what you'd have to do is just basically divide the thank you for closed business by the number of members in your chapter. So does that help, Tammy? I know it doesn't help solve the problem, but hopefully it helps answer your question at least. All right. The next report is the details report. A lot of people say, well, I'm the secretary treasurer and I need to introduce the speaker for the week. How do I get their bio? This is where you can get their bio. Go to the member details report, view member bio. You choose the person from your chapter. And as long as they've filled out their bio in BNI Connect, this is the bio form that we've always handed out in BNI. So the years in business and the key to success and all of that stuff is on this particular report. You can also, if you want to, flip right over to their gains profile and their tops profile and their weekly presentations. So you can view all that information as well. If you'd like to have a list of your chapter visitors, you can go through and do a search for your visitors against your visitor database. There's the attendance report and the traffic lights report and the length of membership report. When we pre-register visitors, you have your visitor registration report as well to see who's in the pipeline. And the nice thing about that report is it also shows you who invited them. It's a great tool to use for visitors days as well. But we are at the top of the hour. We've gone through an entire hour. What I'd like to do is to, for those of you that don't have an unlimited amount of time to spend on BNI Connect like I do, I'd like to thank you guys for being here and remind you that this is being recorded. It will be made available on the support site. So just click on this question mark here in the upper right-hand corner. That will take you to our support site. And on the support site, scroll down to the chapter training. This will be listed. I'll try to have it, if I can get it done before the end of the day. This will be in this article all the way at the bottom for leadership team tools and reports from Friday, June 26th. So I will have this posted here. You can also review any of the other ones that we've done this month as well. Those are all there. Or you can go directly to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. If you would like to be notified of these videos and when they're made available, please check out YouTube and also subscribe to it. This is where we host all of our recorded content, including things like educational moments, for example. We have short 3 to 5 minute videos, as well as these 30 and 60-minute webinars. All right, so for those of you that have a couple more minutes, I would absolutely love to open this up to questions. This is what I do all day, every day, is I support BNI Connect. So I'm happy to answer questions as long as you continue to have them. So let's see, we have a question here from Kim. Kim says, is there a traffic light report you can run for the members of your group? At this time, the traffic lights stop at the chapter level. They don't go all the way down to the member level. One of the reasons for that is they are still deciding what the worldwide calculations are going to be. So there isn't, at this time, a member level traffic lights. So we're hoping that someday the BNI world will come into agreement with that, and if they decide that's going to be the tool going forward, then hopefully they'll be able to put it into BNI Connect. So hopefully that answers your question, Kim. Chris says, is there a way to get statistics of how many visitors turned into actual members? So in the traffic lights report, so if I go and I run the traffic lights report, for my particular region. One of the statistics in here is conversion ratio. And the conversion ratio is essentially, it's really the number of visitors in your chapter divided by the member growth. So the number of new members during that time period. That will give you your conversion ratio. So this will give you your yearly conversion ratio here in BNI Connect. Keep in mind that this is not the number of new members. This is your actual member growth. So even though this may be 0, there might have been, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new members during that time period, but they also lost that many members. So that's one place that you can find your visitor conversion ratio in BNI Connect. So does that answer your question, Chris? All right. What other questions you guys have? I'd be happy to answer questions. All right. So I don't see any other questions. What I'd like to do is to thank everybody for being here today. Thank you for being on the webinar. Again, it is being recorded. One final request, I will be posting next month's webinar schedule very, very soon. By next week, it should be posted. A good referral for me is to refer your other chapter members and especially new members to these webinars. I have a complete series of BNI Connect webinars that we do on a monthly basis, going through all different type of material about BNI Connect in a 5-step process. I would also absolutely love it if you gave us a like on Facebook, facebook.com/BNI Connect Global. Please help me to get to our 10,000 like mark by giving us a like today and asking your chapter members to give us a like as well. All right, and that's all I have for you today. I'd like to thank you all for being here and look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Happy connecting, everyone.